It is a huge, huge, huge honor today to be interviewing my buddy Lorne Lavine. Lorne, you were one of the first 100 people to ever get on Dental Town. Yeah, gosh darn, you posted almost 16,000 times. Dude, I owe you my firstborn son. In fact, I'll give you all four of them because now they're at the age where they cost money. But man, thank you so much. I can still. Did we actually meet for the first time on a mountain?
That was one of the first times. I actually came out to Phoenix to meet with you years ago, and then we did the Climb for a Cause on Mount Charleston with your four boys. I remember that trip very well.
No. I thought we met first on Mount Adams.
Oh, that's right, when you brought the poncho
Climb
as
for
your
a
gear.
cause.
I remember that.
Was that the first time we met?
That may have been one of the first times we met. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I left Phoenix, Arizona, where it was like 117, and I was going up there, and I thought, oh, it's going to be nice and cool, maybe 80 degrees. So I packed like sweats and
yeah, you had a plastic poncho. I remember that was your snow gear.
Oh my God! And it was a glacier of ice. I like to, and if that one guy didn't give up and then give me all of his warm clothes, I couldn't even have gone on. So the only reason I made it to the top is because someone threw in the towel and gave me all of his warm stuff. But hey, I can still remember one of your first emails, clear back in 2001 or 2002, and you said you were going to do, you wanted to be a volunteer moderator for all things digital. And so tell the story, because most people are wondering, how did you go from being a dentist to a periodontist to all things digital?
So my family owns an electronics business in Canada. I grew up with technology. It was always something that interested me.
So you're Canadian?
I'm Canadian, yeah, but I'm a U.S. citizen as well. I have both.
But you're born in Canada?
Born and raised in Toronto, yep.
Oh, that's why you're so proper.
I tried to be. Let me just turn up the speaker here a little bit. So it was always of interest to me, but this was back in the early 90s. This was long before the Shines and Pattersons and Carestreams were involved in dentistry. And it was all small companies, and it fascinated me. As I did my own office, I got interested in it. And the way that it basically mushroomed is that I shared an office with a orthodontist one day a week. And he came to me, this was in the mid-90s, and he said, you know, Lorne, I know you're into this technology stuff. I just got a quote to computerize my office. And this guy had literally 2 chairs to himself and 1 front computer. They gave him a quote for $50,000 for basically 3 computers and some software. And I just thought, you know, it's really too bad that dentists don't have someone that they can turn to who not only understands technology, but understands things from a dentist standpoint. And all of a sudden this light bulb went off, and I just said, hey, well, I can do that. And I started offering it to my referring offices. I was periodontist at the time. And I just said, hey, you know, if you guys need some help, I'm happy to come in and do it. And I was doing it for free. But then I started getting calls from non-referring offices, and I was getting busier and busier, and I was doing it weekends and evenings. And I thought, you know, I should be charging for this time, and it became a side business. And then what happened was that California announced that they were going to pass licensure by credential. I'd gone to college in California, and I was practicing in Vermont at the time, where there's 300 dentists in the entire state. And I knew I wanted to do some consulting and do some IT work for dental offices. And I thought, well, this is perfect because I can move back to LA. I'll practice 3 or 4 days a week. I'll do my consulting a day or 2 a week. And, you know, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, I can kind of shift that ratio or phase out of dentistry. Move to LA, send in my application, and they say, hey, by the way, thank you for your application. You're number 15,000 something on the waiting list, and we should get to you in about a year. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, this is not good. You know, I'm living in the heart of LA with literally no income. And then I lucked out because I had sent an email to Howard Farran, and I said, hey, I've just started getting into Dental Town. Would you be interested in having me help moderate the forums? And all of a sudden, my name was getting out there to tens of thousands of dentists across the country. To this day, 85% of the offices that I work with are out of state. And they're people through Dental Town, through the magazine, through, when I was moderating the forums, that I've been able to establish myself as someone who knows a little bit about technology. And that's what we do. I work with offices all over North America to help them with their technology decisions, going chartless or paperless. And of course, with HIPAA, that's a big deal now. And all of that ties into what we do. So it's been kind of a convoluted story. By the time I was able to get my license, At that point, I already had a couple of employees, and I was loving what I do, and I still do. And I just had never had a desire to go back and do perio. Perio is tough, as you know. I mean, the patients aren't the most compliant in the world, and I just got frustrated with it. With technology, for the most part, if I do it the same way every time, it kind of works out the same way every time. That's not the case, obviously, with perio patients. So
when I look at the 9 specialties recognized by the ADA, the periodontal specialty has changed the most. It's almost unrecognizable. And I see now the members are all voting on changing the name from the American Academy of Periodontology to the American Academy of Implantology and Periodontology. So that might have been a good move that you moved, because that, I mean, that's just, I mean, for you to go from periodontal surgery to IT is not very different than all your peers do. I mean, I remember back in the day in 87, you'd send patients to a periodontist and they do these heroic surgeries on these maxillary molars with trifurcations and trying to section teeth and all this. And now they just, hell with it, pull it and do an implant.
When I started my practice in '92 in Vermont, I was the only periodontist in the entire state who was placing implants, which I thought would be great because I love doing implants. But of course, the general dentists are used to referring to the oral surgeons. That, you know, I had to explain to them, yes, as a periodontist, I think I can handle soft tissue and bone. To the point now, I work with a lot of perio practices, and 75% of their practice on average are implants. So it's definitely changed quite a bit from what I was doing.
So Lorne, I'm gonna be truthful about HIPAA to you. I'm gonna tell you what guys tell me on the show. I mean, when you're out there at a bar watching a football game with 5 dentists drinking beers, and you mention OSHA or HIPAA, they just roll their eyes. Do dentists really need to take HIPAA seriously? Why is this a real issue? You know, is it a phantom ghost monster that lives under your bed that's going to come out and bite like one dentist every year out of 150,000, or is it a real issue?
No, it's a real issue. I actually just did a webinar a couple nights ago with another company, and we went through 10 case studies of all of them were $100,000 plus fines. HIPAA is not like OSHA. What they just say, you know, HIPAA's gone through a bunch of variations. It actually has been around since '96. A lot of people don't know that. They knew more about it when the high-tech rules came out in 2009, and then in 2013 they had the, you know, the quote-unquote final rule, was called the omnibus rule, and they really identified what the fines and penalties are going to be. And the problem is, you know, for a long time is that there really was no people out there that were doing anything about it as far as, you know, enforcement of it. What's happened over the last couple of years, and I just got something in the mail yesterday, is that Health and Human Services has been tasked to really increase the amount of audits that they do. Last year, I think they did something like 1,200 random audits. Okay,
I got to stop you right there, because these are watched in 206 countries on every episode. I'm afraid there's people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America that don't even know what HIPAA is. Will you just explain what HIPAA is and why, what you're talking about? What is HIPAA?
So HIPAA came about from the standpoint that most practices, whether you're in Canada, US, or around the world, but a lot of practices, in order to be efficient, are moving towards a chartless or paperless environment. Records are becoming more digitized, whether it's x-rays, you know, intraoral camera images, patient information. It's all now being saved on computers. HIPAA came about because the government said, you know, if we're going to have this information available now on these electronic records, it's going to be much more prone to some type of hacking or accessibility issues. It's not like a paper chart where someone has to physically break into the office to get it. There's other ways to get to electronic records. So HIPAA came about because the government said, you know, patients have a right to expect that as healthcare providers, we're going to take reasonable precautions to keep that information private and secure. The problem is, of course, is that, you know, basically having the dental profession, the medical profession self-regulate was never going to happen. People just, they don't know about it. They don't know what they need to do. We all have different definitions. So HIPAA came about because there was a desire to say, we need to have a set of rules, and basically a set of standards that can determine what we really should be doing to keep that information protected. Now, it's different in different, like in Canada, they have PIPEDA, it's HIPAA in the US, but the concepts are basically the same. What are we doing to make sure that we keep private information private? What are we doing to keep that secure information secure? The problem with HIPAA, as a lot of offices have come to find out, especially ones that we've worked with that have gone through audits, is that more than 50% of HIPAA rules and regulations are administrative. That's the bugaboo in all of this, because a lot of the stuff that offices need to do, encrypt the data and have a good backup, and things that we can talk about. These are all standard things that all offices probably should be doing even without HIPAA. But where it really bogs down is, well, what are you doing to document it? What types of policies and procedures do you have in place? Do you have this all written out? Do you have an incident report? If there's been a breach, what do you have to do? And that is really tough for a lot of offices, because most offices don't have the manuals in place. They haven't done what they need to do. And you're right. I mean, a lot of dentists roll their eyes and say, oh, I don't want to deal with this. The problem with HIPAA, unlike OSHA, is that it's not a slap on the wrist like OSHA for the most part is. HIPAA identified 4 different levels of fines and penalties. And the lowest level, and what they define as the lowest level, is that not only were you not aware of the fact that there was a breach of your data, but realistically, you probably shouldn't have known that there was a breach. Even that lowest level is up to a $50,000 fine for each type of incident. And they go all the way up to what they call willful neglect, which basically means you knew about this, we know you knew about it, you didn't do anything to rectify it, so now we're going to make sure you never forget us. Those fines go up to $1.5 million for every type of incident as well. So it's just devastating.
Have you seen real fines for real dentists in the United States?
Yes, there's been a number of practices that we've worked with that have been fined. We're certainly, in the news, you just Google it, dental HIPAA fine, you can see a lot out there. HIPAA also, the Health and Human Services has what's called the wall of shame. If you Googled in HIPAA wall of shame, you'll see there's about 1,400 medical and dental practices that have all had to declare breaches. But we're seeing for the average dental office with the fines, somewhere between 200 to 500,000 seems to be fairly typical for the fines. The real issue for a lot of practices is that if you have had a breach of your data, by law, you have to notify every single patient in writing. And we have found that, again, with the offices that we've worked with that have gone through it, somewhere around a 25 to 30% loss of patients overnight once that letter's gone out, which is going to dwarf any fines that HIPAA is going to give you. So
I hear it's worse if you shoot a lion.
Yeah.
So Lorne, right now there's about 7,000 dentists. Almost all of them are commuting to work. How does these individual dentists know if they're HIPAA compliant?
They're not. I mean, when we work with an office and we provide all kinds of services and consulting for offices, the very first thing that I'll say to an office is, listen, we are going to get you a lot closer to compliance than you are right now. Nobody can get you 100% compliant. There are 700 plus pages of HIPAA rules and regulations. A lot of the HIPAA rules, unfortunately, are what's called addressable rules. And so there's 2 types of rules. There's basically required and addressable. Required means you've got to do it no matter what. Addressable, which it gets really confusing for dental offices and all healthcare providers, says, well, if it's reasonable and appropriate, you got to do it. If it's not, come up with some alternative. If there is no alternative, then just document that there is no alternative. The challenge is that who decides if something is reasonable or appropriate? Well, it's up to you as a dentist to make that decision. But if HIPAA police ever show up, you ever get audited, they then get to make that decision. And hundreds and hundreds of those rules are addressable. HIPAA did not give any specifics. They didn't say, for example, there was when Microsoft ended support for Windows XP last year, there's nothing in the HIPAA rules and regulations that says you can't use XP. You've got to go to Windows 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever the case is. What HIPAA did say is that you have to do a risk assessment on an annual basis, and if you discover vulnerabilities, you got to do something about that. Well, most people in the HIPAA world would say, hey, an operating system that's no longer being supported by Microsoft is really not secure, and by definition, Windows XP is not really a HIPAA compliant operating system. But again, they don't specify that. HIPAA doesn't say you have to encrypt your data. They don't even use that word.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate. Okay, most dentists just assume, I mean, everybody I know is using Dentrix, EagleSoft, Soft and Open Dental, that if you're using one of them, it's all HIPAA compliant.
It's not. So
Is that, first of all, is that the four main softwares you see dentists using? Because there's a lot of young dentists that are always asking, they're buying their first system. They just got out of school. And it seems like almost everybody has Dentrix by Henry Schein, EagleSoft by Patterson, SoftDent by Carestream, who also owns PracticeWorks and Open Dental. Are those five pretty much the main ones? I mean,
those are the main ones. What we're also seeing.
Are there any other main ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It depends on your definition of main. What we are seeing is a lot of dental practices are looking seriously at web-based options, and partly because of the HIPAA rules and regulations. Well, the web-based software programs, none of the data is in your office. It's on their servers. So the things that you normally had to worry about with HIPAA, things like backing up the data and encrypting the data, all of that is now removed from your responsibility.
Okay, and who are these web-based dental practice management systems?
The biggest one out there is Curve. Curve Dental's been around.
They're out of Utah?
They're in Utah. They started off in Canada, actually. That's how I knew about them. That was back in 2004, 2005.
Oh, you Canadians all stick together. Yeah. You just all plot against Americans, right?
Yeah, but they've done really well for themselves.
Is Curve out of Provo?
Curve, I believe, is out of Provo or Salt. I mean, I know they're near American Fork, near where Dentrix is actually located.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. That's where Dentrix was started.
They're close to them.
So they're American Fork?
I believe so. They're near there. I know that Denticon.com from Planet DDS has been around a long time. There's a new one called UMBIE, UMBIE, that's out there. So we're seeing more and more of these.
Okay, but this dentist, she's 27 years old and she's all alone. If you had to pick one of those web-based, what would you tell her to buy?
Curve. Curve's been around
Curve.
the longest.
And how much is something like Curve?
Well, it works on a subscription model. That's one of the beauties of those systems. If you get the basic program, it's around $300 a month. But a lot of people want some bells and whistles. They want image management module. Maybe they want to do recall to patients, things like that. So it's not uncommon for us to see a Curve client paying between $400 and $500 a month.
And that solves a lot of the HIPAA stuff because they're going to do over the web. They're going to do your data encryption, data storage, and that takes a lot of the HIPAA burden off of you.
And the backup and all that stuff is now on someone else's service. I could tell you that the absolute most HIPAA compliant dentist out there in the entire country would still be less compliant than a web-based practice management software system would be. They have data centers, they have security, they have multiple levels of redundancy and encryption. And
I would say on Dental Town, I've been on that thing 4 or 5, 6 hours a day since 1998. It seems like when people are talking about Dentrix by Schein, EagleSoft by Patterson, SoftDent by Carestream, PracticeWorks, it seems like it's mostly moaning, bitching, and complaining. But the raving fans are all Open Dental. With Open Dental, it seems like they have everybody that has Open Dental just says they love it, they love it, they love it. Do they do a web-based system?
Not that I know of. I know almost all of them in my discussions with them are working on it. They see the writing on the wall. I think as a society, with the prevalence of Facebook and, Amazon, I mean, everyone's online for basically everything. Banking, insurance, all that stuff is now online. I envision a day, whether it's in 5 years or 50 years, who knows, where all software, not just dental practice management software, is going to be web-based. So we're heading in that direction.
But then the dentists say on Dental Town, they say, yeah, but if my internet goes down, my dental office goes down. What would you say to that?
They have a valid point. What we typically recommend for an office that's going to go with web-based is to have a backup. Most people are going to have some type of broadband, a cable, DSL, whatever. You can, in theory, get a second line. Like, let's say you're on cable, so you get a DSL line. It's going to cost you $30, $40 a month. Most people have smartphones that have some type of tethering function that, normally when an internet goes down, it's not down for days.
I know. I can't even remember the last time the internet went down.
Exactly. We here in Burbank, I mean, we're down maybe 5 minutes a month. It's not a big deal. But you have a backup. You have some type of thing that you can use. But to answer your previous question, I think many of the current systems, Dentrix, for example, does have a web-based program now called Dentrix Ascend. Open Dental, I'm sure, has probably given it a lot of thought. I know EagleSoft is looking into it as well. So yeah, I think we're heading in that direction. But yeah, if someone came to me as a new dentist and said, "Hey, what do you recommend?" typically my first recommendation would be Open Dental. I think it's a fantastic program. It was developed by a dentist. They understand it. And I would say, I wouldn't rule out.
That's out of Oregon. That's out of Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, it's Jordan Sparks. He's out of
Sparks.
Oregon, and he's been doing it for quite some time. For I think around 15.
Where in Oregon is he?
That's a good question. I can't remember exactly where they are.
He's really huge now into cryogenics. Are they where you deep freeze the brain when you die? They deep freeze it so 1,000 years now they can thaw you out and fire you back up.
Yeah, I personally, when I'm gone, I'm gone. They can put me in a microwave.
I want to ask you. You said something about when you do a web base, that they're encrypting the data. They do a backup. Lorne, I can point to 20 threads on Dental Town that the computer crashed. And when they went to restore the backup, they found out they were backing up to the C drive, and it should have been the D drive or some technical deal. But anyway, long story short, I can point to 20 threads where the backup couldn't be restored. How often do you see that? How many dentists listening to you right now that think, I got everything backed up, that if their computer crashed, their backup isn't done right? What percent would you guess?
I would guess probably about 20 to 30%. That's been my experience. I consult with offices all over North America. I go into their practice. We evaluate things. Now, for our clients, we've never had a practice that we have set up the backup that we haven't been able to restore. Now, we do, backup is not a cut and dry process like dentistry is not. We tell our clients, listen, we expect to get you up in 20 to 40 minutes on average, and that is the average, but things happen. I mean, there are technical difficulties. Sometimes we've had a backup that's taken a few hours, much longer than we typically would expect it to do. We've never, to my knowledge, we haven't had anyone ever lose their data. But a lot of people are not backing up their data properly. They're backing up the wrong files. Really, you should be testing that. I mean, that's part of HIPAA, by the way. HIPAA says that you must test and verify that backup on a regular basis. We don't think it has to be more than 2 to 3 times a year. There's a lot of ways you can verify it. To me, the absolute easiest way to do it is take your practice management software, install it on a laptop, a home computer, whatever the case may be, and take your that day's backup, put it in, copy it over to that other computer, and fire up the program. Does this look like my schedule from today? Do these look like our transactions from today? That's the only way to know for sure, to give yourself that piece of...
Yeah, but what percent of dentists are technically smart enough to do what you just said?
On Dental Town, there's a fair amount that I would say are out there. I'd say probably 30 to 40% of the dentists on Dental Town probably can do it. Part of the reason that we have developed that service for our clients, we've been doing that for close to 15 years now, is that the majority don't. And if they do know how to do it, that doesn't mean they have the time to do it. It doesn't mean they have the desire to do it. People get busy. It's just reality. In the modern dental practice with HIPAA and OSHA and marketing and all the social media, all the things you need to do to run a practice, who really has the time or the desire to sit there for an hour or two and test their backup and make sure it's working? That's why we do it for our clients. We said, listen, we'll verify it for you. We'll test it for you, and a couple of times a year.
Okay, explain that. What you keep saying your clients. Well, what is that? Is a monthly subscription plan? Is that a fee for service menu a la carte? What do you mean when you refer to your client?
So we do everything. We started off over the years just offering different services. For example, like when I first started out, of course, and everything that we started doing, we still do. My focus for a long time was hardware, software, networking, setting up backup systems. What's happened in the IT industry is that we've moved towards a model called managed services. And what that means is that in the past, people would call you up when there's a problem and we would fix it. Well, think about dentistry. I mean, there's a reason you put people on a 3 to 4 month, at least when I was doing perio, we put them on a 3 to 4 month recall. And it's because we could catch things at an earlier stage. We could be more proactive, more conservative in how we took care of the problem. Same thing in IT. If we don't know about the problem until there is a problem, oftentimes it's too late or it's so advanced that we're talking about reinstalling Windows or having to completely, it's a major 3, 4, 5 hour undertaking. What managed services is to say, let's monitor this in real time. If we're going to have an antivirus software on there, let's know that there was a virus. Let's have that software report back to me, the IT provider, immediately. If someone's logged in with an incorrect password or username, if there's a corruption in the hard drive, if the computer's running too fast, or the CPU is at 95% of its usage, I want to know these things so that we can be very proactive in it. So those are more of a subscription-based model. So we have clients who just use us for support. Just they buy a block of support time that we'll log in and fix any problems that come up. We have people that get individual services from us, backup, disaster recovery, network monitoring, antivirus software, support, things like that, HIPAA compliance. And we, after a while, and this is what we've really kind of focused on the last couple of years, is that a number of our clients came to us and said, listen, we have 4, 5, 6 services with you guys. You know, is there anything we can do, since we're good clients of yours, to bring the cost down? Because, you know, it starts to add up, obviously, as you go, you know, get all these different services. So then we decided to put it all together as a bundle, where we call it our Practice Bite Guard Suite, where people can get all the services that we offer, plus unlimited support, for one monthly payment. They know every month what it's going to be. The meter's never ticking, so they never have to worry. You know, we have some offices that call us twice a year. We have other ones that call us twice a day. So, you know.
And Lorne, what percent of these offices do you physically have to send a human being to their office, and what percent of this do you do over the internet?
It's changed a lot over the last few years. I would have said up till about 2, 3 years ago, 90% plus were practices that I had to go out to. I really only do that nowadays for people that want a true HIPAA evaluation, because there's a lot. With HIPAA, there's 2 basic types of rules. There is the security rule, which is all the IT stuff, the encryption and firewalls and all that type of stuff, the backup, which are all things that can be handled remotely. But the other part of HIPAA, which is really the initial HIPAA stuff, which is privacy. You know, what are you doing to keep that information? How is your practice set up? Do you have sign-in sheets? You know, where are patient information discussed? You know, things like that. That's a little more challenging to be able to evaluate over the phone. So if someone wants a more comprehensive HIPAA privacy and security evaluation, I'll fly out. But if someone comes to me and says, hey, Lorne, I want to get as HIPAA compliant as I can from the security end of things. I want you to evaluate my network, our hardware, our software, you know, our security. We do that remotely. That's actually something we do for free. We've been doing that for years.
Okay, so would you say of the major softwares, Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftDent, PracticeWorks, Open Dental, that Dentrix is the biggest, the 400-pound gorilla?
Dentrix has probably, you know, now keep in mind that when these companies discuss their user numbers, they consider anyone that was basically ever on their system as a user. If someone's using Dentrix and decides to stop going on support, Dentrix doesn't necessarily count them as somebody that left the company as far as they're you know. So you have to take the numbers with a grain of salt. These are all self-reported. There's no standardization or government that would be able to monitor that. That being the case, you know, just from my own experience, and I've worked with over 2,500 practices, I'd say somewhere around 25 to 30% of all software users are Dentrix users.
And they could upgrade from Dentrix to Dentrix Ascend and move all this to the cloud, and then forget about backups, encryption, data recovery, disaster, all that stuff?
To a certain degree, no. So that there's 2 parts.
But would you recommend that if somebody's listening to you right now and they say, well, I'm on Dentrix and I don't know how to test my backup and I don't know if it's encrypted, but he did mention that Ascend thing. Are you recommending upgrading to Ascend?
Not yet, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a relatively new program. It's not Dentrix in the cloud. It's an actual completely different program. It's called Dentrix Ascend. There certainly are, you know, there's some crossover, but it is a completely different program. So it's a newer program. We would never recommend to our clients or people that I'm talking to that they be the first on the block. Now, Dentrix Ascend has been out for a couple of years. You know, it's getting there, but it's still new enough that I wouldn't say go out and do that immediately. The other challenge is that
Microsoft never releases anything until every bug is worked out.
Well, not exactly.
That is a huge joke. Those guys do find out where their bugs are by selling you the software. That's what Microsoft does.
But you know what? Even with dental practice management software programs, we typically see at least 3 to 6 patches for each version of the software that comes out. They're constantly, I mean, they can't catch every bug. The other thing that people have to wear, and this is where a lot of practices got into trouble, is that they assumed incorrectly that their practice management software is encrypted. And for the most part, it's not. Dentrix, for example, for a long time, they were saying they were encrypted. They're not. They were using data masking. They had to change that. It's closer to encryption than some of the other ones out there. But the other thing is that HIPAA refers to electronic protected health information. The information that's in the practice management software is just one piece of the puzzle. There are images, X-ray images, there's QuickBooks data, there's Word files, Excel spreadsheets, Invisalign, I mean, all that stuff. And if that stuff is sitting on your server, then you still need to do all the other things that we've talked about. You're not out of the woods by just going to a web-based practice management software. So people have to be aware that, yes, it's going to help them out a lot, I think, from the backup and security and when it comes to that information. They still need to be aware that if there's other locations in the practice that has this protected health information, that has to be protected in compliance with HIPAA rules and regulations.
Man, there's just so much things to think about. Crazy.
Yeah, well, that's why we decided to do it for our clients. You know, a lot of IT companies don't really focus on that. We realized years ago this is going to be a big deal. It is a big deal that we've seen, huge fines. I hate to use fear tactics when talking to our clients, but people need to be aware that, listen, this is the risk. It's like car insurance. You're probably never going to need it. The one time that you do, you're going to be really glad that you've got it in place. And that's going to be the same thing with this. You're going to be really happy that the day that HIPAA auditor shows up, you've got your manuals and policies and procedures in place. You've got all your documentation. You're encrypted everything. You've got all the things. As I said, the services that we provide our clients are the main things. We know, having talked to offices that have been audited, that there's certain things that they're looking for. But if an auditor comes in and they say, you know what, I am going to nail this practice. I don't like this dentist, so I'm going to nail him. You're going to get nailed. There's just no way around it. But take the precautions. What they're looking for is what's called VDE, visibly demonstrable evidence. If you have made a good faith effort to be compliant, they are going to look at that very favorably versus a practice that says, oh, what do you mean I need to be doing this? Or I've never heard of HIPAA, or we didn't think of
VDE?
Yeah, visibly demonstrable evidence that you can show that.
So now we've gone from VD to VDE. It's getting worse. Hey, when you talk about that, my job is to estimate what these dentists are thinking in their car. A lot of these dentists say, well, Lorne, am I not a candidate for a web-based software like Curb? Because now I bought myself a CBCT, and I heard those files are just too big to store over the cloud. Is that true or false?
No, you can store whatever you want over the cloud. I mean, we have clients that we support right now that have 500, 600, 700 gigabytes of data. I mean, that's a lot of data.
How long would it take to upload a CBCT? I mean, that's a much bigger file than a Pano or a PA.
Correct. So the way that a lot of the web-based programs works, especially when it comes to, so Curve, for example, when it comes to sensors and Foster plate systems or digital pans, it's a real-time imaging module. It's automatically saved up there. For those larger files, that's almost always done at nighttime. And of course, it's going to depend on the size of the files. It's going to depend on your internet connection. It can be difficult. There's no doubt about it. We have offices that if they run their backup every single night, they can't get through all that data in one night. So we have to sort of, it's a hard way to describe it, but we basically say, okay, we're going to run the backup at night on the weekdays, and then once Friday evening comes, then we're going to do it full bore. We're not going to throttle it as we do during the day, but we'll let it go full bore on the weekend to the point that we can get it all out there. Honestly, Howard, most offices don't put their CBCT images up in the cloud. They'll put it on an external hard drive, encrypt it, get it out of the office on a regular basis, because most data centers, including the one that we work with, charge based on the amount of data you have up there. And it can get very expensive. A lot of offices realize, you know what, it's just not worth it. I'd rather get my practice management data up there, my sensor images, my intraoral camera images, I'll do all that. But the CBCT images are so large and so costly that I'm going to store it locally on an encrypted drive. I'll get it out of the office on a regular basis. But, so we have a lot of offices.
And you say get it out of the office in case the office burns down?
Yeah, one of the things that HIPAA says is that all your data has to be quote unquote retrievable. By definition, that means off-site.
Not in as, and a lot of dentists just use a firebox. So you go to
Yeah.
Home Depot and they say this box will survive a fire, but that's
Yeah.
not good enough.
Yeah. So here's the takeaway from this presentation today. Fireproof does not mean melt proof. It won't protect it at all. We've seen we have offices, unfortunately, that's exactly what they did. They put it in a fireproof safe, and it melted. It's got plastic components for the most part that these external hard drives have, so they couldn't retrieve the data.
There was a dentist on Dentaltown just like 6 months ago, and he was driving home from a restaurant. He's like, "Oh, I wonder what's burning over there. I wonder what that fire is. It's kind of near my office." Drove over there. It was his office.
Yeah, yeah, it would be devastating. And there's other things that can happen: theft, flood. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could suffer a disaster having that data offsite. Now,
so do you recommend the dentist just takes it home?
For something like CBCT, for most backup systems, we don't recommend that from the simple standpoint that you want to try to eliminate the human component as much as possible. You know, if you have a staff member that's responsible for sitting there every night and doing the backup at the end of the day and then taking it home with them, you know it's not done every single day. It's going to be forgotten. People get busy. People might leave it in their car. People may not be encrypting it the way they're supposed to. It gets stolen. Now you've suffered the most common breach that exists out there. Why not consider a system where the human element is completely eliminated, where it's automated? You can get an email every morning that tells you that the backup was successful. It's going to a secure HIPAA-compliant data center. Again, this is what we do for our clients. They can do it themselves if they want.
You talked about your managed subscriptions, but you haven't mentioned any price. How much are these bundled things? I mean, the dentists listening, I know they're wondering, well, how much money are you talking?
So we have clients, it would start as cheap as $35 a month for someone that just wants encrypted email, for example. If someone wants our entire package, which is disaster recovery, data backup, real-time monitoring the network, encrypting the email, policies and procedure manual, breach insurance, encryption, antivirus software. There's a whole new class of viruses out there called ransomware. Where they lock your files and require ransom, so there's protection.
That happened to my son, and we decided to just
It's happened to about a dozen of our clients as well, and you include unlimited technical support, which we provide. You know, the worst case scenario, someone paying $7.99 a month. That's our highest package. We have a lot of practices that do that. We have other practices that pick and choose. They say, you know what, we don't want the unlimited support, or maybe we just want 2 or 3 of these things. We'll bundle it any way we want. Our typical client is somewhere between $200 to $400 a month. That's going on just, you know, a number of the services. But for the people that want, and we've got, you know, close to 100 probably that are on the full suite of packages, the $7.99 seems to be a decent price one. We work with IT companies all the time that work in other fields, in medical fields, in law, whatever. The typical managed services contract that they set up with their clients is $2,500 a month, and they require a 3-year contract. So we kind of feel, hey, $7.99 a month, we only require 1 year. That seems to be much more cost effective than what's standard for the industry. And most of our clients agree.
And just to pin you down on an exact number, what percent of dentists do you think are reasonably HIPAA compliant so they would pass a visibly demonstrable evidence of VDE HIPAA audit? What percent listening to you right now do you think?
One.
Maybe
one person.
And it's you. And it's you. And it's you.
2%. Well, I should say that. I mean, you know, as I said, the clients that we have who are on our suite of services would be for the most part fine. Again, if someone comes in and they want to tell
Lorne, I don't think dentists are gonna get serious till they think it's gonna hurt their pocketbook. I mean, that's human nature. You ought to find some dental office on that wall of shame that got fined. And
there was one in Northern California in December 2013. It was on the CDA, California Dental Association website, where he was a Dentrix user. He thought it was encrypted, and I said it's not. His server was stolen. I believe the fines were about between $200,000 and $300,000. You know, it's hard to get exact information.
Why don't you get him to write an article for Dental Town magazine, or give me his name and email, and I'll see if he'll do a podcast on it.
That's a great idea.
Or you guys could do an online CE course on it.
Yeah,
you could have him talking about, because Socrates said 2,500 years ago that humans only work on greed or fear. And he said fear was much bigger, because you see you see a bunch of zebras and they want to cross a creek, but there's three crocodiles sitting down there. They'd rather just wait it out. And that's why the biggest drops on Wall Street are much bigger than the biggest one-day gains. And maybe if you started out with, yeah, here's a good dude. He thought he was all doing good, and here was his fine, and then talk about it.
There are plenty. I think that's a great idea because there are plenty of practices out there. I did a webinar with an office manager from an office in Massachusetts about 6 months ago that her office had got nailed as well due to a theft as well. So yeah, there's.
So you're saying theft is the biggest issue?
Oh yeah, it's.
Can I tell you my theft issue in my dental office? It was about God, I opened in '87. I think it was about 1994. And I had an alarm system, and it went to my home. So when the alarm went off, my home, and at 1 o'clock, my alarm was going off. So I run out, jumped in my car, drove down to my office. And when I got there, the police were there. And they said, what? And he was a patient of mine. His name was Star. And Officer Star said, what the hell are you doing? I said, my alarm went off. He goes, you idiot. He goes, if someone was in here stealing your stuff and here you show up, you're going to get shot because you're afraid they're stealing your computers. He goes, if you're going to do that, take the damn alarm out of here. Let them steal your damn computers. You don't need to be shot over a bunch of computers. Don't ever do that again. I know you. You got 4 kids. You don't need to be shot trying to get a bad guy. But you're right. These dental offices are broken into because they think they got Vicodin and computers.
The other thing that people should know
and that's why, and by the way, and that's why you never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, ever dispense a narcotic in your office, because when people lose their heroin supply or whatever, and they're in withdrawal, they'll do crazy shit. And if they remembered that you gave them, 2 Vicodin or something after, that's just crazy. Don't ever hand out a narcotic. Would you agree with that, Lorne?
I 100% agree. When it comes to theft or loss of data, far and away though, the number one by multiple times as far as the reason that people suffer breaches is loss of a mobile device. And by mobile device, I mean an external hard drive or thumb drive that people back up to and take it home with them or leave it in their car, or a phone or a laptop. That is easily the number one reason for breach. You go into that wall of shame, and more than half, I believe, are...
Okay, explain that. So the dentist has data on their laptop or their tablet or their iPhone?
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, yeah.
And then that gets stolen, and is the person stealing it trying to get that data, or was it just stolen?
It was just stolen. Something like, I saw some statistic one day that in U.S. airports, there's something like 12,000 laptops a year are stolen, or I mean, it may not have been a year, it might have been a week. I mean, it's a common thing. People want laptops, external hard drives. You leave it in your car, you forget about it. Your car gets broken into. You lose it. I mean, people put them on these little tiny, these little thumb drives as a backup, and they lose it. And if it's not encrypted, at that point, you've suffered a breach, and you have to report it. So and it's so easily preventable. You encrypt that data, you are exempt from the breach notification.
So that's a matter of installing some type of software on your laptop so that. So what percent of the dentists, like I don't have my my SoftDent on my laptop at work, but you're saying other dentists do?
Yeah, but it's not just their SoftDent data. A lot of people have their email on there. Another office, referring office, sends you an email, an unencrypted email with patient information on it. It's got the patient photo. It's got their digital x-ray, the patient name, date of birth maybe, or social. I mean, people shouldn't be sending social security numbers, but they do. But anything that's considered, HIPAA has identified 18 identifiers, everything from a face, a name, a chart ID, initials, all that stuff. If any of that stuff is on the laptop in that email, and someone gets that laptop and they have access to it, you've suffered a breach.
Lorne, dentists are posting CBCTs on Facebook every day, and if you enlarge in the picture, you can read the patient's name on the bottom corner of the x-ray. Have you seen that?
I have seen that, and hopefully they have had the patient sign a waiver that they've agreed to allow their information to be posted online, because if not,
they haven't. You know they haven't.
You know they have. Being a little bit facetious. So yeah,
but they're in trouble for that. They could be in trouble for that.
Oh, that's big trouble. A lot of offices will post patient information on Facebook. They'll take pictures of patients and put them on Facebook without the patient's permission. That's That's not allowed. You absolutely should have a social media policy in your practice that you have the patient sign if you want to be able to do it. A lot of offices say it's not worth the trouble or the hassle, but yeah, you can't take someone's private information, their photos, whatever, and put it online.
I know they're putting CBCTs, and you can read right on the deal, you know, Charlene Wilson, you know, and I've seen name and birth date on CBCTs on Facebook.
That would not, unless the patient wrote, you know.
But you and I know Charlene Wilson would not, yeah, and she sure as hell wouldn't give away her birthday. Do you know any women that give away their birth dates?
None of them none that I know that give away their birth date or their weight. So
yeah, or their dental X-rays,
or yeah, anything. I mean, as a patient, I wouldn't want my stuff up there. I mean, unless I gave permission. Honestly, there wouldn't be a whole lot of reason I would give permission.
Almost every woman in my practice of 28 years that wears a full denture has told me her husband's never seen her without her teeth in ever. So she sure as hell wouldn't want her CBCT up there showing 6 upper maxillary implants and 4 on the floor. And I mean, it's just crazy. I only got you for, we're 3/4 done. I only got you for 15 minutes. I want you to talk to the young kids. These podcasts are just devoured by 30 and under. I mean, they're just podcast addicts. Every time someone sends me an email or whatever, I was reply back and say, you know, what's your age? What year did you graduate? They're kids, and they're so this person is brand new and they're starting up an office and they want to go paperless. You started before there was paperless. I went paperless. This is kind of funny. I went paperless for the year 2000. You young kids don't realize this, but 15 years ago, we all thought the Y2K. It was that was instead of having 4 digits of space wasted for the year 1999, they were just going 99. So when the computer went to the year 2000, it'd be 00, and your computer would have thought it was 1900. So everybody was trying to upgrade their software, and that was when our office decided, hell, let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We'll just go completely paperless. But what should these young kids be thinking about when they set up a paperless practice? What is the big picture from Lorne Lavine's 30,000 foot looking down? What should they be thinking about it if they want to go paperless?
So this is probably one of the most common lectures that I give around the country is 6 steps to a paperless practice. And
you should put that on Dental Town.
I'm happy to put it on Dental Town.
We put up 350 courses, and they just passed 550,000 views.
Wow.
From every course has been viewed by every single country. That 206 countries watch every single course.
Wow.
But I would love it, Lauren. I'm a huge fan of yours. So what are the 6 things, and you got 13 minutes to tell me the 6 things that every practice should be thinking about?
I can do it in about 2 minutes. So number one, it's all stuff that we talked about as well. Number one, in my mind, the most important decision is the practice management software. Certainly for a young office, I would be looking at something like Open Dental. Not only is it a fantastic program, very cost effective. You pay a monthly fee of $160 a month for the first year, then it drops down to $99 a month. That's it. Unless you're converting data from another program, you have no other upfront costs. It's a great program. All the other decisions you make are going to be affected by that practice management software. So that's number one. Secondarily, what are you going to do for image management? Open Dental programs like that have their own image module. We don't typically recommend that. Most of especially the younger dentists.
Okay, when you say image, that's a intraoral camera image or a digital
X-rays, digital camera, pano. I mean, just an image to be able to store all images with the exception of CBCT.
But it includes an intraoral camera photo.
Intraoral camera, yeah, all the other stuff. So certainly you can get like Dentrix, what tends to work with Dexis, and Eaglesoft works with Schick, and Soft Dental Practice work with Kodak. But a lot of our clients tend to look at more open-ended programs like XDR and Aptrix that will work with multiple sensors and multiple cameras and multiple digital pans and have them all mixed up together and working together on the same program. People want to have that flexibility versus saying, hey, I need to be locked into the Patterson or the Carestream or Shine. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a lot of people want to have that flexibility. The third component would be, well, how are you going to design your treatment rooms now? Are you going to do a single monitor, dual monitor? Are you going to have 3 or 4? Scott Looney with his breakaway seminar, he recommends multiple monitors. So there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. So people have to think of how they're going to design the whole system. Now that you've got the software and the design in place, well, you need the infrastructure. That's point number 4. That's going to be the computers, the server, the laptops, the backup devices, the network, all of the hardware that's needed to go into place. And you don't need to go crazy with this. I mean, yes, you can get a HIPAA compliant server that has self-encrypting hard drives and same-day support, and most of our clients go that route. For a startup practice, maybe they're going to look at beefing up a workstation, put a couple of hard drives in it that you can mirror. Maybe you don't have an operating system that's designed for servers. I mean, there's ways to get the cost down. The 5th step would be all the digital stuff, sensors, cameras, digital pans. We don't obviously normally for a startup practice recommend CAD/CAM and cone beam. I think those are fantastic technologies. Most offices, they have enough things to worry about. They should be focusing on the basics, on marketing the practice versus going really high end with the equipment. And then the final part is all the services, getting HIPAA compliant, backup, disaster recovery, network monitoring, and all the things that you need to do to be compliant and secure. Get all the things in place, and you don't need to go crazy. And our typical practice that is going like a scratch practice is getting, and they want to go digital with their x-rays, it's not unusual for them to spend $40,000, $50,000. I mean, that's a lot, but compared to the fit up of an office, it's not a huge expense. You can go crazy. You can spend well over $100,000. We've had offices that have done it for $20,000. It just really depends on your budget and what you want to do. But if you follow those 6 steps in order, because, for example, a lot of times we work with younger dentists, they're really excited about getting digital x-rays. So they'll go to a trade show, they'll look at the sensors and say, yeah, this is the one I want, it looks great. And then they don't realize that, oh, by the way, it doesn't really integrate with that practice management software you currently have in the practice. Or, you really don't have the computer infrastructure in place to run that. Your computers are too old. So you have to sort of walk through that step by step and kind of have basically a treatment plan of how you're going to do it. And again, this is something that I do for practices all over North America. We'll work with you individually to say, hey, let's figure out what you want to do, what your budget is, and find a solution that's going to work for your practice.
And these guys listen to this someday can go log on Dentaltown and see these 6 steps in order.
I will get it on there. I have it on my website, thediginaldentist.com, but certainly I'm more than happy to put it on Dentaltown. I've written for a number. I think I had an article on it in Dentaltown magazine years ago, so I'm happy to get it up there again. So absolutely. So
not to be rude or anything, but just succinctly, you said the 6 things need to be in order. So just succinctly say the 6 steps in order again.
Number one, practice management software. Number 2, image management software. Number 3, operatory design. Number 4, computer and hardware infrastructure. Number 5, digital technologies, and number 6, services.
And I just want to say to the young kids out there, you're walking out with $250,000 student loans. And I know you think that's a lot of money, but Lorne, how many offices could you give these guys a name to that do $1 million a year and take home $300,000 or $400,000 a year that do not own a CAD/CAM, a laser, or a CBCT? I
would say. And again, I've worked with 2,500 practices, 95% plus, and these are established. I mean, most of the time when I go out to an office, I'm working with an established practice. And I would say only 5% of them have those technologies.
Yeah, so you kids don't need to buy all that stuff. And then I also tell them, Lorne, that they think $250,000 is a lot of money, but it won't be a tenth of what their first divorce costs. So I try to put it in perspective. I want to say another thing to the young kids. They're always telling me, they're always saying, Howard, all you old dentists out there, you're all Microsoft fans and everything, and they're all Apple fans. They have Mac and iPhones, and are any of these softwares that you're talking about, are any of them Mac friendly?
There are a number and an increasingly larger number of Mac-specific programs that are coming out there. Where we're finding the limitations is the image management. Most of the digital pans out there, for example, use a standard interface called Twain. It's the same thing that scanners use. Twain does not work with Apple operating systems. So you're limiting there. There are very few sensors that will work with Mac-specific programs. There are very few intraoral cameras that work natively. Now, you can certainly work around that. You can get Boot Camp or VMware or Parallels or something like that and run PC applications on a Mac. But in my mind, you've kind of defeated the purpose of the Apple, which is to run its software. So there's no doubt you can do an Apple-only solution. There's a dentist here in Encino that has done that. I mean, it certainly can be done. I would caution practice, new dentists that, hey, it's a great operating system, but for a dental office, you're probably going to find that your options are much more limited in what you can bring into the practice. And it's usually going to be at a higher cost premium as well. So,
and Lorne, there's 150,000 dentists in America. There's 2 million around the world. But just for the American U.S. market of 150,000 dentists, what percent would you say are paperless today in 2015?
Between 5 and 10%.
Really?
Yeah.
And what percent do you think have gotten rid of film X-ray and gone to digital X-ray?
That's a good question. I've seen all the surveys that Dentaltown does. It's about 50%. I think
so. Half have got rid of film. By the way, I had a patient swallow a film, and I hope nothing develops. That's a pun. That's a pun. So you think 50% have gotten rid of the old Kodak and Fuji film and gone digital X-rays, but only 5 to 10% are paperless. But Lorne, I have to throw that definition under a bus because my office, you guys said to me, Howard, are you paperless? Absolutely. God, we still use a lot of paper. So what is your definition of paperless?
So
getting rid of the chart?
Yes. No paper. The only practices that we work with that are truly paperless are new builds, that they can go paperless from the get-go. Existing practices, we don't even use that term because none of them are. We use the word chartless. And for that, it's more. So I would say, let me rephrase it. I would say 5 to 10% of the practices that we work with are chartless, that no longer use a physical chart. But I would put the ones that are, of all the practices we work with that are truly paperless, somewhere between 1 and 2%.
Okay, and what is the difference? What is the difference between a paperless practice and a chartless practice?
Chartless practice would not be using the physical chart, but like most practices, they still have paper. They have EOBs that come in, they scan. To me, taking paper and scanning it, which is what a lot of practices do, is not paperless. You've got paper in there. They've got no physical chart, but they have walkout statements that are paper. They have EOBs that come in that are paper. They do prescriptions that are paper. I mean, there's still a lot of paper in the practice. If you're scanning documents in, you're not really paperless, but by all definitions. And it's impossible for an existing practice.
And Lorne, you used a word, and I don't know if it was a typo. I don't know if you typo. Is there a word anti-malware?
Anti-malware.
Anti-malware?
Malware.
I thought maybe that was animalware, and you misspelled, and it was a typo.
Yeah, malware is anything. Mal is
anti-malware.
Yeah, mal's a Latin for bad. So viruses, spyware, ransomware that we talked about. There's cryptoviruses. All of that is considered malware, things that can do bad things to your computers, and you've got to protect yourself against all that. I mean, any practice would know the need to run antivirus software. It makes perfect sense. But as I said, the problem is that most of the antivirus programs out there don't protect against these ransomwares. Honestly, one of the best things that offices can do to protect themselves, besides there's a program called Crypto Prevent, which will actually prevent most of it, but it's already something I've talked about. If you have an encrypted backup, I'm not aware of any virus that can attack an encrypted backup. The dozen or so practices that we've worked with that got hit with these ransomware, all we had to do was restore their backup.
So what anti-malware do you recommend? Are there any name brands that you like?
Sure. The one that I come from it from a different perspective from that. I'm an IT provider. So we use a product from a company called ESET, E-S-E-T. They've got a program called NOD32. We like it because we have literally thousands of computers that we monitor and manage at any given moment, and we can monitor all of them. Rather than the updates going back to the company, it actually goes through our server. So we monitor that. Any decent program out there, Trend Micro, Kaspersky, there's good ones. The ones that I would recommend staying away from are the free ones. If people love free programs, it makes great sense. The problem is, number one, with one exception, which is Microsoft Security Essentials. Most of the free ones, you're not allowed to install them in a commercial environment like a dental office. But secondarily, they're just not all that good.
Lorne, if someone's listening to you and has a question that I wasn't smart enough to ask, how can they get a hold of you?
Lots of ways. They can go to my website, thedigitalDentist.com, and fill out the Contact Us form. They can find me on Facebook under The Digital Dentist, Twitter, The Digital Dentist. They can certainly email me, Dr. Lavine, DRLAVINE, at thedigitalDentist.com. We have a toll-free number, 866-204-3398. I never charge for phone consultations. If someone wants to pick my brain or see if there's a way that we can help them with whatever they want to do, I'm more than happy to speak to anyone.
So your company's called The Digital Dentist, but I always think of you as DTC.
Dental Technology Consultants was and still is the name of our company. For so many years, people knew me as a digital dentist. I was writing articles online under the Digital Dentist moniker. That about 2 or 3 years ago, I actually did a DBA, doing business as the Digital Dentist. So it's both names right now.
So DTC stands for
Dental Technology Consultants.
Dental Technology Consultants.
But I'm also known as the Digital Dentist, and that's actually my company name now as well. So I'm serious. I'm serious. If you're out there listening, I've known this guy for 15 years. I've climbed mountains. I don't know anybody that knows all this shit in dentistry. I mean, you've posted 16,000 times. You're even a programmer. I mean, you got all these certifications. I mean, you're a freak. And I want to tell you that seriously, dude, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you've done for dentistry, all that you've done for Dentaltown, and this is a huge part of dentistry. I mean, we went to school 8 years, learned how to do a root canal, and now we have to install anti-malware software. I mean, this is not what we went to school for, and you've answered so many damn questions to us dentists who don't know any of this stuff. So Lorne, thank you so much. I hope you put those courses up on Dentaltown, because what we see, Lorne, and the reason why is, I look at the data, who's taking the online CE and who's doing the podcasts, and they're different behaviors. You always know that some dentists, like I always like to get the textbook. Like when Mish come out with a textbook, I want to read the textbook. Other people want to go to the course. Some people do online CE at their desk and they want AGD credit. Other people do the podcasting is purely a multitasking behavior. Everybody listening to a podcast is doing something else. They're mostly driving to work, or they're on a treadmill or something like that. And that's why we always send these things off to get a transcript, so they don't have to stop. I spoil my homies so they don't have to stop and take notes. It'll all be put up on a transcript. But Lorne, thank you so much for all that you've done for dentistry and Dentaltown. Well, thank you, Howard, and right back at you. 15 years ago when I signed up for Dentaltown, and there weren't many people on there, and I had no idea what it was going to turn to, and I would say somewhere around 2/3 of all the practices I've worked with are townies. And
those are the best 2/3.
They are the best 2/3, but Dentaltown is an amazing resource, and what you've done with it is fantastic. It's been great for my career, and I am more than happy to give back whatever I can, because I'm a townie and will be for life, and thank you for all that you do for dentistry.
And I hope next time I see you, we're on a mountain.
That would be nice.
Okay, talk to you later, buddy.
Okay, Howard, take care.
Bye-bye.